I have a two-part question. First part is, do each of you believe that if you're elected, you will only be assigned to do one type of calendar? Or do judges rotate through other types of calendars? So that if you do dependency and delinquency this year, do you believe that you could be assigned to family law next year? And what in each of your individual backgrounds would enable each of you to sit in assignments in criminal, civil, probate, dependency, delinquency, family law? I also have a statement I have to make that I find fairly offensive. I was at Judge Stracer's swearing in 2 years ago. That was January 2011. Do the arithmetic. I know you need to backtrack. You have not been a judge 2 years. Thank you.
Did you gentlemen get the questions?
Can I go first?
Yes.
Essentially, the tradition in this county has been they rotate judges about every 2 years. Not always, but that's been the tradition. The picking of assignments is done by the presiding judge. It happens to have been the same presiding judge for about 8 or 9 years now, I think, maybe more. Essentially, when you come to this county as a judge, you take whatever assignment you're given, and then normally 2 years later, you'll rotate out into something else. My background, before I took the bench, obviously criminal law. That's what I did as a law enforcement officer, so I was very familiar with things like the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the basic rules of evidence. Once I took the bench as a commissioner, I was doing traffic, county ordinance. Those are considered criminal crimes. I've done civil law, and then I did small claims. Small claims is based on the amount asked for, not on the complexity of the case. So you can have a $2,000 small claims that is a very complicated issue. I did traffic accidents, I did construction defects, contract law, you name it, it's come through small claims at some point. I've done criminal law, I've done criminal law jury trials. Actually, I've done 2 criminal cases since I retired. And the last one actually went to jury trial, and I thought the gentleman was being railroaded. He was accused of negligent care of a child. Essentially, the charge was he had his medical marijuana in his nightstand in his bedroom. The child was 8 years old. The child belonged to his girlfriend, and he was charged that that was neglect and possibly dangerous to the child. I couldn't get the DA to dismiss it. We wound up taking it to jury trial. Jury was out for not even lunch. And by the time I got back to my office, I had the call from the clerk saying, come back, you got a verdict. And the verdict was not guilty on all counts. I have the knowledge of criminal law. I have the knowledge of civil law. I was trained to be dependency and retired before I got that assignment. I would anticipate that this January will have been 2 years that that assignment has been with a particular judge, and that it would probably be a rotation out, but not necessarily. Sometimes you stay longer, it can be by choice or just how it falls. That's my answer.
Judge Stracer.
Well, let me address a couple things. First of all, Doug, if you remember, I was actually sworn in December because you were there for that swearing in. I believe it was, I couldn't give you the exact date, but I think
No, you were sworn in January. Your office did not begin until January.
Let me finish, please.
Okay.
Because there was, if you recall, there was 2 swearing-ins. One was in December, and then the other one was in January. The formal one was in January. The informal one that you were at was in December. Again, I think it was around the 26th or 27th, but that's really neither here nor there. I have said at every presentation that I've been at how long I've been on the bench. If I said 2 years tonight, we quickly trimmed our thing down to 3 minutes. What I have said in every presentation is that I've been on the bench for 16 months. I think at the it's now 17 months. In fact, I think at the League of Women Voters thing, I said that to be precise, I've been on the bench for 17 months. So if you want to be precise, I was sworn in December.
I just listened to your words, not mine.
Okay, Mr. Hoffman.
No, wait. I've got other things to
Okay, I'm
address.
sorry.
on the issue of rotation, it is true that there is a general policy that judges should be rotated through assignments about every 2 years. However, that policy is not strictly enforced. In fact, I think that there's a number of judges that have been much longer than 2 years on their assignments. There's also a policy with regard to juvenile delinquency and to juvenile dependency that judges assigned to those assignments are favored to stay in those positions for extended periods of time. The Office of Administrative Courts encourages presiding judges to keep their dependency and delinquency judges in those assignments for extended periods of time because it is a specialized area of the law, and they want to develop a deep expertise in those judges in those assignments. Now, with regard to background, no, I don't have any criminal law background. I never practiced criminal law, but I have a very broad civil law background. From my early days when I did such things as landlord-tenant, workers' comp, wills and trust, even did some personal injury, and then going on to much more complex kinds of litigation. So I have a very broad background that I can, if I'm rotated into something, certainly I can easily take up civil law, and don't have a strong background in family law, but there's no guarantee that the next judge is even going to get family law. In fact, I would point out that if a family law candidate were elected, the chances of the family law candidate getting family law as their assignment is probably pretty slim. It's like a DA typically doesn't get to do criminal law. They get something else. Case in point, Judge Malikian, federal prosecutor. I don't know, 20 years as a federal prosecutor in this state. He does family law. Now, he started out for a short bit in doing a short stint when he came to the bench in doing some criminal law, but then has moved into dependency until I came on the bench. He was relieved of that dependency assignment, and he's now exclusively the family law judge. So there are those kinds of assignments. That's generally the way it works. It's not written into statute that it has to work that way, but that's generally the way it works.
Thank you, sir.
And, I mean, I'll echo the same thing. Judges generally get rotated every 2 years. So I'll skip over that part because you've heard it twice now. What I will tell you is my background, which is a broad civil background. I have not also done criminal law. I made a decision early on, even though it was suggested by many, many people about the trial experience you gain doing criminal law. It was one of those things just for my own personal viewpoint. I absolutely believe in the Constitution. I believe a defendant has a right to a criminal defense. It just wasn't my best day in court to get somebody who I thought was guilty off. That just wasn't where I was at in private practice, so I never went down that path. But I had a very broad-based civil background. What I will tell you again, I touched on it briefly before, which was graduated law school in May, took the bar exam, got results, fortunately passed on the first try, got those results November, opened my office January. So it was a situation where those cases that were coming in, I was learning very, very quickly. I have no doubt, and the people obviously that have endorsed me have no doubt, that my learning curve will be very, very steep, and I will be up to speed in a very short period of time. The fact that I don't have that criminal law background, yet I'm endorsed by the district attorney and almost all the prosecutors in his office, county counsel, is a pretty good indicator of their belief in me, which again is humbling and very much appreciated. But I have no doubt that the learning curve will be steep and I'll be up to speed in a very short period of time.
What law school did you graduate from?
Golden Gate Law School in San Francisco.
What's it called?
Golden Gate Law School?
Let me, I want to go back and want to correct something that I said. You know what, I might have been actually sworn in 3 times. I was sworn in December, and I think what Judge Femister is referring to is that we had an early swearing in, which was an informal, and I think it was around January 6th or 7th, and then there was a formal swearing in, but which was where all the county officials were brought in for that. But there was a private swearing in that I had with the presiding judge in December, and it was right at the end of December. So, and honestly, I don't know if you were at that thing, but anyway.
The reason for that is if you weren't sworn in before the end of the year, the governor that appointed you didn't have the power to put you into the next year.
Well,
you have to be sworn in in the year that you're appointed. That's what the law says.
Can,
No, it's actually, you have to be sworn in before he leaves office. And he left office, I believe, on January 3rd, which meant I had to be sworn in before January 3rd, which meant I had to be sworn in December.
Is
Okay.
it before the, after the Christmas holiday?